G'day everybody, my name is Elliot Waters and you're listening to the Dysregulated Podcast. As always, thank you for tuning in. Alright, so another episode with me on the road. I'm in my car again, driving from Newcastle back to Wodonga. I'm on the M31 Hume Highway. I tell you, I'm getting pretty used to this road. I've been driving this a fair bit. And whenever I'm on the Hume Highway, I seem to be in the sort of frame of mind to be able to do a podcast episode, which is great because, again, as you may have noticed, if you've been following the show, and thank you if you have, there's been another little break between episodes. Needless to say, I have not been in the frame of mind lately to be able to do anything to do with the podcast. If you follow the podcast on Instagram and Facebook, you would also know that the Dysregulated Daily series has just about disappeared as well. And I'm going to explain all of that in this episode right here, right now. Let me just say from the outset, the fact that I'm doing this episode is a sign to me that what I'm about to talk about, these 6 weeks of my panic, of an anxiety storm, the fog, it's been more than fog, but let's just say fog, is maybe starting to lift somewhat. Because what I'm about to talk about is the last 6 weeks. And the last 6 weeks have been an anxious blur. And it has been, at times, horrible, unbelievably difficult. But here I am. I'm still trucking, literally. But I'm going to tell you all about it because it's been really hard. Really, really hard. And I think, again, it'll offer some insights into what's going on, especially if you've been following the show and following my story, because you know that when I disappear a bit, that's usually when things are getting quite difficult. And I've disappeared for quite a few weeks, about 6 weeks, funnily enough. So I'm going to explain all of that right here, right now. So this is the story. As you would maybe be aware, if not, I've started a new job, right? I've started a new job. I'm back in the transport industry, and this time I'm really doing it properly. So I'm now driving semi-trailers, and I will be driving B-doubles and hopefully road trains. I hopefully soon will be driving interstate as well, all over Australia potentially. But, I've got to get the training done. I've got to get, competent at driving the big rigs before all that happens. But that's what I've been doing the last 6 weeks. I've been in this role for 6 weeks, and it has been one hell of a learning curve. It has been very, very steep indeed. So as I said, I'm back in the transport industry doing it properly. So I'm driving semi-trailers. I'm loading and unloading big loads. And this is the thing, right? I've chosen this particular company for a few reasons, but one of them is this is trucking. Like, this is real Aussie trucky stuff, and it's hard work. Like, the sort of freight that we carry and the work that I've been doing and the work that our transport company does, like, this is some of the hardest stuff you can do in the industry. And this is a pretty bloody hard industry anyway. So, and I chose this because I want to have the credentials. I want to have the experience. I want to be able to say, if I'm ever questioned about my experience in the industry, that I've done this. Not many people have done this, and I've bloody done it, and I did a good job of it. So if anyone's trying to point fingers saying I'm just a pen pusher, let me tell you about my time at Dawson's Haulage, all right? Because let me tell you, this is the real stuff. And, it's been unbelievably difficult, but that has been partly on purpose. But the problem is, you see, this is the thing. Anyone starting a new job gets nervous and anxious, right? If you don't feel anxiety or in a bit of stress and all that sort of stuff from starting a new job, well, then that's probably a problem, okay? That's the problem. It's not feeling the anxiety. It's not feeling it at all. That says there's something wrong. You're probably chosen the wrong job, I'd say, because if you're not feeling any anxiety, well, you're probably not trying to extend yourself and learn new skills and abilities, and you're probably in a role that's within yourself. But anyway, that's not what's going on with me. All right. I am feeling all the anxiety that I should be feeling, and then a whole lot more. Oh man, the last 6 weeks have been so difficult. Like when I say that it's been 6 weeks of panic, one big long panic attack, sustained, perpetual in many ways panic attack. Like I'm not saying that for effect, that I don't say anything on this podcast to try and build things up more than what they are. I just tell the truth, and it's been absolutely hellacious in many ways. It has been so hard. I have been battling like an inner critic that has never been more emboldened, imposter syndrome to the max, unbelievable levels of self-doubt. I've been studying every little thing that I do and finding fault in everything. And it's just so tiring when you're amplifying the negative constantly and ignoring, not necessarily through choice, but ignoring or not being able to see the positives. And like I was saying, like anyone taking on your role, it's difficult. But for me, it's even more so, I suppose. And it's been like this for every job that I've had. At Bunnings, I remember Bunnings was so hard for so long as well. Bunnings was really difficult. The Cambridge Hotel, that was hard too. I used to go there freaking out that I didn't belong because I was older than everyone else and, everyone thought I was a loser and all this stuff. And in the end, I spent 7 years there and I was the backbone of the joint. And everyone loved me and I loved them. You know what I mean? Like, I know logically, using my wise mind, that, when I start new roles, generally speaking, I get very good at them. And, I don't know if I become a leader, but I have in some jobs, but, like I become that dependable, good worker that people ask questions because I know how to do the job, because I'm a good operator or whatever. And I know that to be true, but I never can believe it when these anxiety storms are doing their thing. Now, this job that I've taken on, this new trucking job, it's been the hardest by far. And it makes perfect sense as to why. You would know if you've been listening to this podcast long enough, I've been banging on about, and I'm going to continue to because it is becoming an all-encompassing obsession. My autism is almost solely focused now on this dream of welding together or synergizing, marrying up my passions of mental health and psychology and transport logistics, in particular road transport. All right. Now, I've taken this job on knowing full well that the potential here is that this will be the opening to realizing my dreams and my vision and making Resilient Roadways a reality. This is, I feel, what everything has been building up towards. All the battles in my own mental health, all the different jobs I've had and all the, the difficulties in hanging on to life itself in many ways and just, all the battles I've had staying out of hospital and just everything. My degree, doing my honours degree and all the black dog, presentations I've done to tens of thousands of people, even though I'm so socially anxious and autistic, like, all this pressure and trauma in some ways I've put myself under. I feel as though it's all been building towards this. And now I'm on the precipice of everything coming together. But all I've got to do is succeed in this role. I need to become a great transport operator. So I have the credentials. And then I need to be able to make my vision a reality, make Resilient Roadways everything that I'm hoping it will be, and making it significant enough that it will change people's lives for the better. So I'm real scared, because I feel like I'm on the edge of everything coming together, but the pressure is immense because I've got to still do the work. I've got to become a good operator. I've got to succeed. I've got to be successful. I've got to be good at what I do. Everything needs to fall into place. And I am petrified that that won't happen because I feel as though, although yes, maybe everything has been building towards this moment, if I can't make this work, then everything falls away. And then all of a sudden I am screwed. So I was talking to a friend before on the phone and I hadn't really thought of it in this way until I was talking to her. And I said to her that in many ways, the reason why I'm not in hospital right now, or I'm not, absolutely down and out, sinking in depression, although I am sinking under anxiety and the weight of expectations, make no mistake, my life at the moment is unbelievably difficult. I wouldn't say I've been enjoying the last 6 weeks. It's been an absolute war, and the war isn't done yet. But at the same time, I'm not depressed, There is a bit of vigor about what I'm doing. I am dreaming big. I am seeing this vision and actually believing that maybe it could come true. I've been doing a little bit of work trying to get this Resilient Roadways project up and running. And I'm doing that because I do have this belief underneath all this anxiety that this is something that is worth doing and I can do it as long as I get through this anxious storm and I succeed in this role. But I was saying to my friend that, in many ways, like I said, this is keeping me out of hospital. And this is keeping me alive because this is my meaning and purpose, which has shifted a bit over the years, don't get me wrong, but it's always been around the same sort of stuff, which is using my own lived experience and my own, history in, whether it's in mental health areas or in different industries I've worked in, trying to use all that experience and also my psychology, degree and what is all that sort of stuff. My meaning and purpose has been essentially to use all that to try and improve as many people's mental health as I can, generally speaking. And over the years, it's sort of shifted from different focus areas and stuff, but that's the general gist of it. Try and help people with their mental health and use my own experiences as the foundation to do so, because I am a strong believer, as we know, that lived experience is the key to linking all of the research, all of the, community work, everything that everyone's doing. I think lived experience is what will link everything together and ultimately change people's lives. And I believe that 100%. But now my meaning and purpose, or at least there's now a parallel meaning and purpose, which is to do the same, but in the road transport industry. And this is, like I said, a fusion of my passions I've had for so long. Like from when I was a kid, I loved transport. I loved trains originally, but the supply chain, logistics, I used to talk about it all the time during school, and, mental health always was there as well. Like, finally being able to come up with an idea that brings these two worlds together, like it has the potential to absolutely lift me out of the depression that I've suffered over the years for good. But the thing is, if this falls apart, and if this meaning and purpose appears unattainable and not realistic, and all of a sudden I'm back to the drawing board, I'm telling you, that's when it could be, well, I don't want to, let me just say, like I said, the meaning and purpose, I think, is like it does with all people. This is why I also push this idea and have, through the Black Dog Institute with my presentations with them for so long, meaning and purpose is always a core component of my presentations, because I am a firm believer that having a strong meaning and purpose can insulate you from the most evil of thoughts. I do. And I think if your meaning and purpose is significant enough to you, I think it can ward off depression and a lot of other mental illnesses and symptoms of mental illness as well. Like, it is one of those things, I think, that can change a human's life forever. But I also know that not having a meaning and purpose, or not believing in your ability to be able to make it come to fruition, I also know how unbelievably dangerous that is. And I've lived it myself, and it's almost taken me out on numerous occasions. And my worry is that if I can't make this all work, and then that meaning and purpose that I've got all of a sudden either is smashed to bits, or is this ideal that I have no belief in being able to attain, I'm really, that is something that I'm quite worried about, because, that could be a total disaster, if you know what I mean. Going back to hospital might actually be a better alternative than what else could happen, I feel, if this all blows up. So, all right, being very negative there, but look, what I'm saying is this is the context in which I'm trying to get a handle of this new job and the new skills that's required and the knowledge I've got to try and learn and all this stuff. So this is next level because the significance is next level. So the last 6 weeks, like I was saying, has been absolutely hellacious. It's been torture, constant panic, constant. Like, forget about like moving from Newcastle to a new like town where I don't know anybody. Like, that hasn't even shown up on the radar yet because that is such a low priority, anxiety provoking, issue compared to what I've just been talking about. So every time I make a little, I wouldn't even say a mistake, like an indiscretion. For example, I'm trying to reverse, a lot of people won't understand what I'm talking about, but, I'll try and say this as clearly as I can. But, like trying to reverse the prime move, right? My Kenworth truck to a trailer. Okay, and you got to line it up or else the pin doesn't go in the, what's it called? The turntable. You got to line the kingpin up so it locks in. Okay, so then when you drive away, the trailer doesn't fall off. So you got to line it up, and like right now, I say I'm pretty good at. I'm very confident now doing this. I've done it lots and lots over the last 6 weeks. But for a while there, I wouldn't line it up correctly. I'd have to just adjust a little bit, and I would be like sweating big time because I'm so stressed that people are watching me going, he's a failure, get rid of him. Even though no one's watching me, it feels like the world is. And I'm watching myself make this little mistake, which is nothing, and absolutely blowing it out to be the biggest thing in the world and being a sign and evidence that this is not going to work. This is just another example of how I'm in way over my head and this is all about to blow up at any moment. And as you know, it's not just, this isn't the job for me. I need to try a new job. Like, this is meaning and purpose. This is my whole direction in life. This is my whole life potentially blowing up in the smithereens. That's the level of anxiety, the level of panic that I've been experiencing and that I've been amplifying, not on purpose, every time I make a slight indiscretion. And like, they're little things like, man, it's just, and the worst, there's a lot of worst parts, but one of the worst parts is I know how ridiculous this all is. Now, I know this process is something that I do, but I also know it's a lot worse than previously. And I also know why. I'm talking about it right here, right now, aren't I? I know exactly what's going on, as I usually do with all of my mental health, not fragilities, but, complexities. Like, I usually know exactly what's going on. I know that it's ridiculous. I know there's no logic to it. I can test that theory, and I do, and I can come to conclusions that are in line with what other people seem to think about what I'm going through. And yet that doesn't change a thing, This is why it's mental illness, because I don't have a choice in this. I'm not choosing to amplify every indiscretion and being so anxious that I'm making up things that aren't even actually happening. Like, this isn't fun. This isn't on purpose. This isn't the build character or anything. This is out of my control, and I wish I wasn't doing it. So very quickly, so I don't know if I explained this before, but there's like 2 main streams of anxiety or where it's coming from. The first stream, which is what I just talked about, is the actual role itself. Okay, so driving proper trucks this time, using these Road Ranger gearboxes with 18 gears in it, and trying not to crunch gears and having the double clutch. And like, these are skills and stuff that are extremely difficult. That's why, being a truckie, an Australian truckie that drives Road Ranger gearboxes, B-doubles, road trains, all over like, these people who are my heroes, like, make no mistake, there is so much to this job, more than I thought there would be, to be honest. Like, these are top operators, man. Like, and they deserve respect because the job is hard. Like, and I'll talk about in future episodes how the job's hard because of being away from family and the long hours, but that's not the point of this episode. But just the mechanics of the job, driving these massive vehicles, controlling these engines with 600 horsepower, these massive Cummins engines with these gearboxes and trying to, make it all work. Like, it's massive, this is a huge undertaking for anybody, myself included. And, and that's fine though. That's what I knew was happening. But, again, like, my expectations are, unfortunately, that I need to be the best operator straight away. It's been the same with anything that I've started from scratch. Day one, I need to be the best or else I'm failing. So that's the sort of paradigm that I'm viewing, unfortunately, my beginnings of driving B doubles and semi trailers and doing all this properly, and it's been hard because that is you can't win. It's a no win game. You can't win that game. Like, for example, like these gearboxes, right? These Road Ranger gearboxes, 18 gears, you're splitting gears. You got to match the revs or else the gear won't go in, and then it makes this noise, and you got to double clutch, and you got to pick the right gear going up hills, or else you're going to go backward. Like, there is so much to this gearbox, just this gearbox, and it really separates truckies from wannabes, and that's why I chose in part this company I'm working for, because I know they have trucks with these gearboxes because they're doing big loads. This is the real stuff. This is where the credentials are, and this is the experience that I can lean on and draw upon when I'm trying to make differences in the industry, when it comes to mental health, because I can be a top operator first and researcher second, because I drive and have driven the real stuff. I've done the interstate, I've done the long hours. I know what it's like because I am one. I'm a truckie. You know what I mean? And that's why Resilient Roadways is going to work, I think, because it's based on the experiences at the coalface of the industry. Anyway, that's a topic for another day. So one, stream of anxiety is my actual performance in this role, trying to learn everything, and how overwhelming it is trying to learn everything, and these expectations I have. So that in itself is just ridiculously difficult to manage, but, it is what it is. I knew this was coming, although the intensity's probably been a bit more than I thought, but hey, this is what was always going to happen, and I just hope that all this pain will equal, a big reward at the end. Now, the other stream of anxiety, or where it's coming from, is, I guess, like the social side of things. Do my colleagues, do the fellow truckies, do they like me? Do they have any sort of respect for me? Are they laughing at me at how garbage I am at driving a truck by me back? Or worse, are they thinking this guy's not going to make it? We've got to pull the pin on him, Like, I create these not fantasies, but these nightmares in my head. And I have had nightmares. Let me tell you, there's been a lot of nightmares, literally, waking up covered in sweat, freaking out because in my dream, everyone said that, you're hopeless, go back to Newcastle, you won't make it, get out. But like, there's this social side of trying to earn the respect of everybody, but feeling as though I never will, and that I don't have any respect at all, and quite the opposite. They all think I'm a bit of a joke, and to be honest, they don't really like me, and they're trying to ostracize me and hope that I leave, ASAP. Like, that's the... And there's been days where my anxiety is so bad that I have 100%, 90% believe that. Like, I've driven back into the yard, and a couple of the guys, are standing with a manager, one of the managers say, and, they just look over as I drive in, as you do, because like, oh, someone's pulled up, that's me. Elliot's back with another load, how good's he going? But I'm thinking they're looking at me going, this guy is hopeless. How do we get rid of him? He is garbage, And I have felt so sure about that. And then, like, for example, one of these days, I was sure I was getting a sack, right? So very quickly, I don't know if you're aware, you would be if you're listening to this episode currently, but there is a fuel crisis across the world because of this war with Iran, the Strait of Hormuz, and all this sort of stuff. So the price of diesel in Australia has gone up astronomically. And, me being economically minded and knowing geopolitics and all that sort of stuff, I'm not stupid. This transport company I work for, their fuel bill for diesel would have gone up by tens of thousands of dollars potentially per day. So, in my head, I'm thinking all of a sudden this business, doesn't matter who it is, any business, but this particular one that I've just started with, the week that the fuel crisis started, funnily enough, all of a sudden their costs have gone through the roof, like every transport company, but, their costs have gone through the roof. And potentially, the managers, the owners are thinking, look, we've got to cut costs because we've got to absorb this cost somehow. We might have to cut a few team members because, it's unsustainable to trade this way. So obviously I've got it in my head that they're looking to cut people. And I'm the most recent person who started. So obviously I'm thinking I'm the first one to go. And I remember there was this particular day I drove in and the manager was talking to one of the other managers and I was sure it was about me and that they were preparing to say, listen, Elliot, we appreciate the fact that you've come down from Newcastle and you've made this big effort. We respect that. But unfortunately, because of, trading conditions, our hands are tied and we're not able to keep you on the books, which is very unfortunate. But, fuel crisis out of our control. Sorry, mate. Good luck with whatever is next. So this particular day, I was absolutely convinced I'm gone. And I justify. I was like, yeah, it makes sense. I'm on their side, like this fuel bill thing, this diesel price is ridiculous and it's no one's fault in this country, especially not in this company. Like, they're just doing what they got to do to survive and keep everyone else employed. I'd get rid of me too, So I'm convinced I'm gone and I'm actually on their side about this. Anyway, they call me over. I'm like, oh, this is it. I'm done. I'm absolutely done. And you can see why I would think that, randomly-ish. I pull up and I remember I went to the toilet, which was sort of near where they were standing because near the offices, and they said, Ellie, can you come here for a second? And so I'm thinking, well, I had a good couple of weeks and shit, this is it. I'm done. This is my worst night. And I remember walking over just floating, I disassociate completely. And, there was no stress, actually. There was no anxiety. I was just numb. And anyway, from what I remember, they basically said, you're doing a really good job, keep at it. And, like we're pretty impressed with the ticker that you've shown and, keep at it. And let me tell you, in the transport industry, to get feedback like that is massive. This is the sort of industry, and maybe this is one of these cultural things that need to change. I don't know. I'm going to find this out. But often you don't hear about the good work that you've done, you only, well, in some places in the industry, you only really hear about the things that maybe you need to work on or mistakes that have been made, and you need to hear that feedback, don't get me wrong, but it's the other end of the scale where maybe we need a bit more of that, which is that, you're actually doing a good job. We appreciate the work that you're doing. Keep it up. So I actually got a bit of this feedback and I knew straight away, I was like, this is a special moment because this doesn't happen in trucking very often. And then, straight away, all of a sudden, that theory I had that I was so sure about that I was getting the sack, like it was the complete opposite. And I remember in that moment thinking, well, what else am I coming up with? These ideas that, that are fueled by anxiety, by imposter syndrome, by my inner critic, by all of this. What else is there that I'm convinced is going on that maybe isn't happening at all? And I need to get my head out of that anxious storm and try and look at things with a bit more balance. So that was about week 3. And that did, help some fears a little bit, but I don't know. The last 6 weeks, that's just one example, but there's been plenty. But like every day, I jump in the truck and I'm starting it up and I'm thinking, oh, look, I've got to get going quick. They're going to think I'm just wasting time. I bet you they're watching me try and hook up this trailer. I bet you they're thinking, what's he doing? He should be doing, like my mind just doesn't stop. It's just going and going and going with all these negative things, all this negative self-talk and just absolutely running me down and trying to convince me that things are so bad, but they're about to get a hell of a lot worse. So prepare yourself because you haven't experienced negative emotion until you've experienced what's coming. So that's every day. Every day I'm thinking that, I'm judging my performance as if I should be the best driver the world's ever seen. I'm assuming that I'm nothing but a drain of resources at this place and I'm not adding value as a team member at all, which is not true. I'm coming up with these scenarios of where I'm going to get sacked or where I'm going to make a huge mistake or where I am making mistakes and that at any moment my fraudulent, claims of being a truckie are about to be found out. And I'm just petrified 24/7 about all of this. It just goes on and I'm freaking out. And it's only been the last week that maybe some of this has started to lift. And I think it has. And I'm trying to look at this more objectively. And part of this is the fact I'm doing this episode. So dysregulated daily, gone. Haven't done it for 6 weeks. I haven't done a potty episode for like 4 weeks. There's no surprise that this is happening. It's because when I'm so in the grind of this anxious tornado that's just dragging me down to my version of hell, when I am totally drowning in this, my capacity to do anything else but hold on to whatever the most important thing is, I just don't have the capacity to do anything. So, I've been holding on when it comes to the job. So I've been doing big hours, 12, 13 hours. I've been doing so much work, working so hard. And to be honest, I've actually been doing pretty good. I'm pretty happy when the fog allows me to see it with how I've been going. Don't get me wrong, there's so much to learn. Oh, God, it's so overwhelming. But at the same time, so far, I've done pretty well. And I'm trying to hold on to that. And the fact that I'm able to think that now means that the panic is starting to lift somewhat. But overall, for the last 6 weeks, it's just been constant. Constant. Even when I finish work, I'm thinking about work. I'm thinking about Resilient Roadways and how I should be doing more for it. I'm not achieving enough. And you know how it works. If you've listened to this show long enough, you know those negative spirals I get into about, what I'm contributing to the world and all that sort of stuff. So, you know what it's like. But all of this has been at an intensity that I don't think I've experienced before. But the intensity, I think, is directly related to the significance of what I'm undertaking here. And I think if I can just get through this anxiety and then get comfortable within the role, then things are going to really happen. Because, let's be honest, all right? And I'm being honest with myself here. Last 6 weeks have been horrible. But man, have I just kept on trucking. Seriously, this is another example. Listen to this positivity. This is unreal, but it's true. This is another chapter of Elliot's resilience, of Elliot's strength of character, of just being, just tough as nails and just weathering the storm, just being battered from all directions, just absolutely belted, but somehow just keeping on, keeping on trucking. I just keep punching, again, I'm like Rocky. I'm getting belted, but I go down, but I just get straight back up. And I say to Apollo Creed, let's go, let's do it. Anyway, I digress. But that's the story, right? That's what the last 6 weeks have been. Just absolute panic and total anxiety. And I haven't been able to escape it. And it's coming from a few directions. Like I said, some of it's coming from a place where this stuff comes from for all people when they start something new, especially something that has significance. We all get a bit of nerves, a bit of anxiety because like, holy dooly, this is it, and that's normal. And the anxiety at that level is good because it keeps you sharp, and you remember things better and you're locked in and, like it's evolutionary. But unfortunately, if you're like me and your anxiety just, doesn't have like a limit to it, it just becomes so great that the burden is just, it's crushing. It just crushes you. But that's the thing. And I guess that's really the message of this episode, which is here I am, I'm driving back to Wodonga now from Newcastle, when I get in, I'm going to be at work again tomorrow at 6 a.m, probably another 11, 12-hour day. Bring it on. I'm going to be freaking out, but look, what can I say? I'm pretty tough, So that's what the last 6 weeks has been. It's been one panic attack, but what's really important is that it's been a panic attack, but I haven't wavered. I don't know what like other people have been seeing of me and what they're thinking, but from the feedback that I've got, it's all been pretty positive that, Ellie, you've made a huge step here, but you're really digging in and you're learning the craft, the art of trucking and I even got told that because I went down there, right, obviously I've got a degree in psychology and that is sort of frowned upon a bit in the transport industry amongst, truckies, and I get why, pen pushing, all that sort of stuff. But, I sort of went down there and I tried to keep that secret a little bit, but at the same time, I'm not going to lie who I am or what I'm about. And I was pretty open and honest pretty early on that I had a big goal here of this Resilient Roadways to try and help with the mental health of the industry. So obviously me having a degree in psychology and being a part of research in psychology came up, and I wasn't going to lie about it. One of the managers actually come and pulled me aside because he did notice I was having a particularly difficult day. But again, he said, mate, everyone's impressed at how you're just giving it everything you've got. And he said, look, I know you think it's a secret, but let me tell you right now, everyone knows that you got a degree in psychology, okay? Secret's out, which I laughed and said, yeah, I've got obviously a big mouth. I can't keep a secret, which is true. But he said, mate, let me tell you, you are earning lots of respect from the team because, yeah, you got a degree and maybe people at first thought, oh, what's going on here? But, you've been getting in there as much as anyone else and you've given everything you've got and, mate, you're earning respect. And I remember that was a big moment too. So that's what's going on, right? Obviously, doing this episode right now, I'm a bit amped up. I am a bit amped up. And I've been amped up for weeks, But what's interesting as well, I'm going to wrap this episode up shortly, but what's interesting as well is the difference, though, between, I guess, the effects of my, or at least my energy levels, how my energy is despite these anxious storms, Like I remember when I started Bunnings or started Canberra and stuff, like I was so anxious, obviously, and I was so tired all the time, just fatigued because I was running, fight or flight mode or freeze constantly. And, the cortisol was pumping, heart rate would have been up, the norepinephrine would have been flowing way too much and constantly in that, state of, all right, something's about to happen. I've got to be ready, really hard on the body, physiologically. And then that all filters into your psychological, health as well. It all is linked up. But the thing is, like back then in other roles, it used to just floor me, I'd just be so tired and just bleh. Whereas this time, although the anxious storm is stronger than it's ever been, like I get to work and I'm raring to go, I jump in and I'm like, righto, let's go, pick up this load. I'm ready to strap it down, show me how to use the dogs and like I'm still bubbling along. I got that energy, It's like, yeah, although I'm under extreme stress and extreme psychological load, as far as my actual energy goes, I've got energy. And I think that's because I know I'm doing what I should be doing. And that fires dopamine like nothing else. If you are following your meaning and purpose and you are engaged in something that is directly related to your meaning and purpose, and he's doing nothing but furthering your aims as far as that goes and fulfilling that meaning and purpose and the vision that's been created, nothing gets dopamine going like that. And when dopamine's flowing, energy tends to flow with it. And not only do you have energy, it's energy that can actually be focused on what you are trying to achieve. And that's why I think I've been able to, for all of this stress I've been under, when it comes to the actual role of driving and focusing on driving and tying my loads down properly and learning the craft, I've been locked in, baby, locked in big time. Like I do think I've done a pretty good job at picking it all up. And, that I haven't really wandered from the task and from the goal that's, like I come down and I knew the first couple of months would just be learning the industry, proving that I've got what it takes in such a difficult, environment that transport is and, all that sort of stuff, proving to myself that I can do it. I knew it would be just head down and just absolutely go for it. And I also knew obviously that this stress would come with it. But that's one thing this anxious load hasn't been able to do, which is knock me off course. I've turned up every day. I've put in every day. I've given it everything and I'm bloody proud of that. And I know that once this storm lifts, I am going to absolutely love what I'm doing. And this is what I should have been doing from years ago when I was at Tamex Transport when I was younger. And I almost did, but then it all just sort of fell apart right at the moment I was about to fully engage with the industry, which is a shame. But then I did pivot towards, psychology, and now I'm bringing them both together. So maybe it was meant to be. But that's the thing. As difficult as this has been, I haven't wavered at all. Like the vision is as clear as ever, if not clearer. And I can see how my efforts right now directly relate to what I'm trying to achieve. And that is exciting. I just need this anxiety to piss off, and so I can enjoy what I'm doing. Because just to finish up this episode, that's essentially what the anxiety is doing. It's suffocating my joy. It's suppressing my ability to enjoy what I'm doing. And once I'm able to dial down the anxiety, I think that's when the joy, the pure joy, will come out. Like I said, transport and supply chain logistics and stuff, this is one of my autistic fixations, right? Forever. I used to have, in high school, I used to talk about trucks. I had a hashtag, supply chain never sleeps. I was the outback truckin warrior. Like, trust me, when I'm able to fully enjoy this job, like the joy from my, I guess, inner child in many ways is going to be unbelievable. And that's what I can't wait to happen. And that is part of why I'm sticking with it. Because, yeah, there's the meaning and purpose. That's definitely, obviously, a motivator. But I do know that underneath all this negativity, there is pure joy. And a lot of it, I think, is coming from my little inner child that doesn't feel pure joy very often. And, there's times when I look at the big trucks, I'm like, yeah, how good is this? And it's only fleeting, those little moments. But this is what's exciting, is that these fleeting moments are starting to happen a little bit more. I haven't been able to hold on to it and, really make it into a big proper moment, but there are little glimpses of this joy that is bubbling below the surface. And I'm really excited for when I can let my autistic obsessions just absolutely run wild without fear of judgment from people, or this fear that I'm hopeless at what I'm doing and, I should quit. When I'm confident that I'm competent and all that sort of stuff, it's going to be immense. It's going to be amazing. But make no mistake, the last 6 weeks have been absolute torture. Oh, it's been so hard. It's been like my capacity to do anything is just gone. I can't go shopping for food 'cause I'm too scared. I can't, it's just, I haven't been able to talk to friends. I haven't been able to make phone calls to people that I need to do. And, I haven't been able to do all the podcast stuff, everything. It's just taken a back seat because I've had whatever energies and focus I've been able to muster. It's been wholly focused on truck driving, and which is what's had to happen. But it is a shame that a few other things have had to sort of fall by the wayside, at least momentarily, until, I'm able to open up my capacity levels again. So there you go. That's the reason why you haven't heard from me much, because I've been in the grind big time. The last 6 weeks have been so hard. But the good thing is, I think the storm is starting to lift somewhat. And I think doing this episode is proof of that. So fingers crossed that trend continues this week. And then all of a sudden, maybe then I'll be able to grab onto these glimpses of joy. And instead of amplifying this perceived negativity, a lot of it, which I don't think is even there, I might be able to amplify this joy. And if I can do that, holy dooly, watch out, because then Resilient Roadways and Elliott Waters is just going to absolutely fire on all cylinders. And I don't think the world has seen the potential that is coming, that is bubbling below the surface. I just got to get good at being a truck operator, get confident, and then just, oh, mate, it's all there. And that's just to finish up, like, again, as difficult as the last 6 weeks have been, I know, like, I am low-key excited about the fact that, I'm actually doing this. I've been talking about this for so long. And even when I reached out to the owner of the company and listened to the podcast that he was on, and then had the phone call with him and explained about all the mental health work I want to do, and he said they'll give me a platform for my work if they can, and, they're happy to give me a role and train me properly. And, it's felt like a dream all throughout, but it's now starting to really feel real. And it's like, wow, that's exciting. This is actually one of my big plans, that's actually starting to happen. Like, it's happening. The pieces so far have fallen into place, and they're continuing to. Like, this is it. I'm doing exactly what I was dreaming of doing and I challenged myself to do. And in so many, there's so many other instances where the anxiety has got too much and I've never quite gone for it. That's not happening this time. Like, I am absolutely going for it with everything I've got. But I think that is also why the anxiety has been like I've never experienced before and so sustained, because there is a link there, unfortunately, with the significance of the things that I do and then the anxious response that comes from it. But hey, again, that's Elliot, that's me. And that's generalized anxiety disorder. That's all of them. That's just how it is. But the thing is, what I'm really proud about, and I am trying to remember this and give myself a pat on the back, is that I am sticking with it. And although, bombs are going off around me, it feels like I just keep on keeping on. And man, that's pretty cool. Go Elliot. Unbelievable. All right, that'll do for me. I know I've waffled a lot. When I'm driving back to Wodonga or Newcastle or whatever, I don't know, I get in these moods, I just talk and talk and talk. And I hope it's not bringing the quality of the podcast down. I still think like these rants, monologues in some way that I'm doing in the car, I do truly believe that they are offering insights that there's not many other, places you can find insights like these, and the raw honesty, I guess. There's no secrecy, this. But I do get worried a bit that I am waffling a bit the last few episodes. So if I am waffling a bit, and you'd like to see me maybe tighten it up a bit, please let me know. But at the same time, if you're loving me just going for it and just, telling you everything that I feel and going into, the depths of my experience, if you think this is actually what this podcast should be about, well, tell me that too, okay? Because again, waffling now, but it's the same sort of thing. The podcast comes with its own level of anxiety, stress, and expectations, big time. And often I think, I'm waffling too much. It must be boring. People must tune out. Then other times I do, I guess, more rigid, focused episodes. I think, now it's just becoming like every other podcast and it's getting boring. I'm taking the color out of it. So I'll be honest with you, I've got no idea. I never have. I've never had any idea about what the best formula is for this podcast. Although I do suspect that maybe it's just me being honest and truthful and telling you how it is and how it feels to be me and to live with these mental illnesses. And whatever way I package it, as long as it stays true to, my commitment that I've always had on this show to provide you with the most raw, honest, genuine, fair income account of mental illness on all of the internet. Like that is still the foundational pillar that I subscribe to and aim for. And that's what I, try and do these podcast episodes and this whole show and everything that I do with that being, the guidepost. It's all about, telling people how it is and trying to offer, a story, a narrative that people can understand, even if maybe they're not going through the same sorts of things. But at the same time, there's so many people that are going through such similar experiences. And what I try to do is offer, like I said, a narrative, an account of things. And I try to explain, describe, and create a message that resonates with people, and I don't know. I think I do an all right job at that, but yeah, there's, like everything, there's so much doubt, and I never know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. So anyway, I just try and keep it as real as I can. All right, now I'm definitely waffling on. Thank you for listening. If you are enjoying the show, please let me know, okay? Please tell me the format of episodes that you enjoy the most. I definitely am going to start doing more episodes again on, I guess the science of psychology, the research behind mental health and these mental illnesses. So, for example, there's an episode that I promised a friend that I'm going to do, which I have to do. So it's going to be on a particular disorder, schizoaffective disorder, actually. And I want to do a deep dive on that disorder because that is one that has a lot of, I guess, stigma, different stigma to borderline personality, for example, but stigma all the same. And I want to sort of, demystify schizoaffective disorder a little bit. And I want to do that with quite a few of the mental illnesses. I've done a few already, but I want to keep going and explore these different diagnoses and explain to people what they're really like, not what the textbook says, what it actually is like to live like this, That's the plan. So I want to bring more of that back, and I'll be doing that once I have capacity to do this stuff again, all right? And, you've been listening to this episode, you know that all my energies have had to be focused on my new job and everything that's going with it, but I'm hoping that now some of the storm is starting to lift and I can redirect my energies towards things like the podcast and Dysregulated Daily as well. So anyway, that's what's hopefully coming soon. I'm not sure when, but at least now I'm thinking about it again, and that's a good sign. So as always, though, if you are enjoying the show, like I say, reach out to me, but please pass it on to other people who may get something out of this as well. Like there's a lot of people, for example, that would like to understand more about mental health because maybe they're going through something, or they feel as though there's people that they care about that's going through this stuff, but maybe they don't feel confident, doing the research themselves or asking questions of people because of fear of judgment, whatever. The good thing about my podcast is that you can listen to it and nobody has to know. All right. So if you want to know a bit about mental health, for example, you could say to friends and, you don't really know where to start, but you want to know what it's really like. Listen to this bloke, this dysregulated podcast thing. He's a bit nutty. He's not all there, but he tells it how it is. And, it's a good insight into how things are. At least I hope it is. So yeah, pass it on to people that may get something out of it. That would be cool too. All right. That's enough from me. I am almost at Wodonga. I'm almost at Albury first and then Wodonga. So I've got to prepare for coming back, and then I've got another big week coming up, and hopefully sooner rather than later, I'll be talking to you about it again in a much more positive light. Okay. And then we can start to focus on other things as well. All right. Thanks for listening. I do appreciate it. And I'll talk to you next time here on the Dysregulated Podcast.